Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs? We're recording this on freaking Saturday, so this should come out sometime today.
Yes, sir.
My name's Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. As I said, we are back. We are back. Next week we should be back on our normal schedule.
Yeah, maybe.
Times, maybe.
Who knows?
We'll see. Yeah, we're definitely going to have our normal first 2 episodes out. But anyway, it is week 14 officially. Thursday Night Football was actually, on the grand scheme of things, I hate that the Patriots won, but do you feel like that was a good football game at least?
Yeah,
okay.
It was okay.
It was all right. Everyone thought it was going to be a 6-7 snooze fest.
It definitely wasn't what I thought. I bet the under in that game and it was 30 points.
Me too. I bet it when it was 31.5, and I thought I was jumping in on the.
That was a lock.
Yeah, it was a freaking lock.
Last 3 Patriots game hit the under on 20. So,
but I did get. I think Deontay Johnson had 2 catches in the game. I bet plus 25 on his catches, and then I bet 2.5 catches for Zeke. So I got the 2.5 catches on the first drive, and I felt good about my parlay. So there's that.
Yeah, I felt good about my parlay until the game started. But I also had Deontay Johnson in there on mine, and he hit. And I had another one that hit.
Okay.
But well, it didn't matter because this all of the parlays. I did 2 parlays, and they both had the Steelers winning. So
yikes. All right.
And the under.
So we do have starts and sits for week 14. This is it. This is the final countdown. Some of these teams are in the toilet bowl after this week, and some of you teams are going for a chip. And hopefully, if you've been listening to this pod, you're going to the chip. More people.
Well, we'll start off with getting in the playoffs. How about that?
Yeah, let's do that. So you got one more week left to try to get into the playoffs. Should be interesting. A lot of I said this on my show by myself, Rick, but I said there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of crap being shoveled.
There is
a lot of 5 and what is it? 5 and 7, or
5 and
6
8.
and 7, 5 and 8, and 7 and 6 teams, and they're all fighting for one spot. So,
yep.
With that being said, we got starts and sits for you on this episode. Before we jump into that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review. Share this pod with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like and comment down below. Be sure to leave any questions you have. We'll try to get to them before tomorrow's games. I love football. I'm going to watch Red Zone all day. I actually kind of like when my team doesn't play on Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
When the Patriots were playing and I actually wanted to watch them, it was good, but I just don't focus on anything else but that game. And now when the Patriots are on, it's like I probably should watch this, but it's misery. So it's just kind of like a distraction. And then I'm forced to root against them for the pick. And it's like I'm sitting there rooting for the other. I've never thought I'd root for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, I know, it is kind of gross,
though, by the way.
When you put it like that.
Sorry, Pittsburgh fans, but you guys are absolutely a fraudulent football team.
Oh, big time, bro.
I mean,
they have a good defense, Patriots. But they're kind of built like the Patriots, except they have good receivers. That's the only difference.
Well, so you remember the Patriots teams, like the 2021 team, max rookie year, 2022. Like how they get turnovers and score touchdowns?
Yeah.
That's Pittsburgh right now. Patriots haven't done that all year, which is specifically probably why besides their offense being terrible. But their defense is not scoring. They usually have 4 or 5 touchdowns a year. I don't think they have one.
Yeah.
I think they have
Dino
one.
Jeremiah always says, it's okay to be boring. It's okay to be bad, but don't be both. And the Steelers and Patriots are kind of both.
Yeah, kind of both. Well, 7-6 is hell of a lot. I'd rather be there.
7-6 isn't. Yeah, but they're not as good as their record says. I don't think.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. We got. We're gonna try to get this to you expeditiously. I know you don't have a lot of time to watch the episode because it's football's tomorrow. So we'll start quickly with our quarterback starts this week. You ready to go, Rick?
Yep.
All right, my quarterback start this week: Tua versus Tennessee. Tennessee, surprisingly, usually has a good defense. I would say if a team with a defensive-minded coach has a bad defense, that probably is not a good thing. Not a good thing. But Tennessee right now has given up an average of 16.4 points per game to the quarterback position, so they're one of the bottom matchups in the league. Bottom, I think, 15. So right around the midway point. But the big thing about this situation is Tua against middling and bad defenses goes ham. He always gets good on his fantasy points. So this is not a week that you should sit Tua. I've talked about this before. If Tua faces a bad matchup, it generally means Tua is not going to be good. This has been consistent over the last 2 years. So going up against Tennessee this week, it's going to be an easier matchup for him, which means there's probably going to be a lot of points scored, not just for Tua, but also for the other weapons. Is Devin A-Chain back, Rick?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. He's going to get a lot of points this week. I guarantee it. That's a Chuck.
Okay, I like
that.
that.
Chuck guarantee.
He had 25 last week.
But Tua's going to be good this week, so you should start him.
Yeah, no, good start. I got Justin Fields versus Detroit. He's been so up and down this year. But it is a good matchup. He's coming off of kind of a bad week, but they have the bye, so kind of regroup. And usually when a decent quarterback has a bad week, you expect a bigger week the next one. So he's got a good matchup. He's got that in his favor. And then he also, last time he played Detroit, he had 21 fantasy points. And I think last year he played pretty well against Detroit as well for fantasy. Last year, different defense. The Lions do have a better defense this year. But last year he had a 40-point game versus Detroit. So I'm not expecting that, but I am expecting a good week for Justin Fields.
Yeah, that's a good one. I was thinking about putting Justin as the start. Detroit's defense is good though, so that's slightly concerning.
They're okay.
All right. Let's move to the sit quarterback. Mine's Matt Stafford at Baltimore. I feel like I put in Baltimore as a sit for quarterbacks every single week now since they started being elite. But they only give up 12 fantasy points a game to the quarterback position.
Dang.
I know Stafford has been one of those dudes that you look at as a potential streaming option on a week-to-week basis. This is not a week that I want to start Stafford. Sucks if you're flipping back and forth between two quarterbacks, and Stafford was one of them, but you have to sit him this week. No choice. If he has a good week, I don't even want to take the risk of finding that out. You know what I mean? It's just not worth it. So
yeah,
sit Stafford.
No, that's a good one. That probably would have been my first choice, but close your ears, Morgan, because I'm going CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud versus the Jets.
Boo!
Listen,
Stroud's gonna light up the Jets. 35 plus coming up.
Okay, let's relax.
That's my home.
I have CJ Stroud and Justin Fields in a different redraft league, and I am starting Justin Fields over CJ Stroud.
Okay, that's fair.
The Jets right now versus quarterbacks rank 5th, best in the league. So it is a very difficult matchup. The game is in New York. So I don't know what the weather is going to be like tomorrow in New York, but it could be bad. Probably windy if we're being honest. But either way, I like CJ Stroud, so don't take this the wrong way. And he very well, I'm not saying he's going to have an awful week. Like in real football, he might be decent, but it's probably going to be something like 250 yards and 1 touchdown.
He's the QB5 though.
The Jet. What is it? I know he is the QB5, but last week he had 16 versus Denver. It's not like he's had 30-point weeks every single week. Like he has had some tougher weeks against tougher matchups. But it's more about the Jets. The Jets are a mess. They're a bad team, but their defense is still good. Their defense has been good every single week. No quarterback has lit them up all season, which includes Mahomes and Josh Allen.
Yeah.
If CJ Stroud goes up against the Jets and does what you said and throws 4 touchdowns and 400 yards, you might give him the MVP. Might be the first rookie quarterback to ever win MVP.
That's only if they make the playoffs.
If they win this week and CJ Stroud throws 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, they're in a playoff spot, and he's the favorite to win MVP.
I mean, they could win against.
But
the
I don't
Jets
think he's
anyway,
going to throw
but
400 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Since week 8,
No,
though, he is QB2 behind Dak Prescott. So there's no quarterback in the league in fantasy football that has been better.
He did have a 41 against Tampa and a 30 against Jacksonville.
That's okay.
I'm not arguing against CJ Stroud, bro. This is not a CJ. It's
it sounds
the
like
Jets.
It sounds
defense.
like you're just hoping that CJ Stroud sucks this week. No, I don't. I looked at it and I saw that it was.
I have him on a team.
He is ranked currently expert consensus for week 14 at 12, and Justin Fields is ranked at 6 or 7. So, starting Justin Fields over Stroud isn't necessarily a hot take, just so you guys all know. So Rick's not jumping in the lake.
I would start Fields very confidently over CJ Stroud.
Confidence! I like that. I'm
for this week, dude. For this week.
I'm glad that
next week we can ride CJ Stroud to the freaking moon. He's playing Tennessee. And it's playoffs, so there you go.
I was gonna say, in the home league is really the only league that I have Stroud in, and so I'm not really worried about it. I'm in. Do you have
a backup?
No. I'm not. I'm in the playoffs. Like the only.
I'll say
the only way I don't make the playoffs.
You probably get like 15
is if 2 other teams win and outscore me by 125 plus.
Yeah, so that is literally impossible.
That is, yeah. So I'm in.
Unless you score 40 points. And I could
care less who I play in the first round, the second round, or the third round. I'm just happy to be here. So Stroud can run this week.
I'm not.
I'd rather lose to John this week than lose to him in the playoffs.
For you, that's fine. But for other people that have other options
that's fair.
And they need to win, like, for example, I'm already in the playoffs in this league, but I do have that league with Fields and CJ Stroud, and I would play Justin Fields over Stroud.
Yeah, if I had Fields and Stroud, I'd be lubed. The 2 favorite quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Anyway. All right, let's move to the running back position. By the way, that's not bad advice for Rick. At this point, I'm toning the line of Stroud is...
Stroud all the way, best quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah. So let's move to the running back position. I have, at my start this week, Madison at the Raiders. This is the last time Madison will hit this show if he sucks this week. So I hate you, Alexander Madison. You're really, like... You bring me a lot of pain, friend. I'm starting him, so if you guys lose with him, I also will probably have the same problem. Tell him.
He's only scored double digits 1 time since week 6.
That makes me feel great. Thanks for.
But that is a good matchup.
Yeah,
the Raiders is a very good matchup.
The Raiders suck against stopping the run. 22.6 fantasy points per game given up. They do have Ty Chandler, who has been mixing in a little bit, but and it seems like they do try to ride the hot hand occasionally, but Chandler is, like, if you watch, Chandler is worse than Madison, not by a lot, but he is worse. So but I would say for this week, Madison is a good play against the Raiders. Like, if you're gonna get a good week for Madison, it would be this week. Now, Madison doesn't completely suck. He's just always gonna get 9-10 points, and you're gonna be like, oh, yay. So anyway, I would start Madison this week against the Raiders, and I don't feel super confident about it, but what the hell?
Well, if you are going to start Madison, this would be the week to do it, because I think the Raiders' rush defense is I want to say bottom 5. I know it's at least bottom 10.
Yeah.
I don't know where it ranks there, but
okay.
It's not good.
It's not good.
That's not bad. Mine is this is what we call my apologies start of the week. My apologies to Joe Mixon, who I admitted it was a hot take last week when I said to sit him. He had 29 fantasy points last week.
Yeah, I know.
As my sit of the week running
Monday Night Football against Jacksonville. Oh, let that man.
I had reasons. They had a backup quarterback, and the Jaguars against running backs before last week was top, I think, 3 in the NFL. So it was one of the worst matchups you could possibly have, and they had a backup quarterback. So it didn't seem like it would be a good matchup. But then Joe Mixon had 2 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So, and I also didn't realize that, and I should have realized this, but who's the backup? What's his name from the Bengals?
Jake Browning.
The current quarterback.
I was about to say
Jake
CJ
Browning.
Beathard, but that is Jacksonville.
had a lot of dump offs in the game. So Mixon had 7 targets, 6 catches. So
That's going to happen when you have a bad
that is included. This game against the Colts defense has been mediocre at best. They're not great against running backs. And with the factor that Mixon is going to get receiving work, all the rushing work, and likely a touchdown again in this week, he seems like a lock to have a pretty good game.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the sits this week at the running back position. I got Walker/Charbonnet at San Francisco, so this is going to be a tough matchup for both of these boys. Charbonnet probably should come out of your lineups, especially if Walker is playing, but if Walker does happen to sit out, then you would go Charbonnet if you had to start him, but I don't want to start either one of these guys. Walker has been dealing with an oblique injury, and now Charbonnet has been dealing with a knee injury, so like there's crap going on with those running backs. They had a lot of success throwing the ball last time, so I just don't feel like it's going to be a good week against San Francisco. I would sit both of those guys just to give you some of the numbers too. Against the running back position, San Francisco has given up 14 points per game, so if they're both in there, it doesn't feel like it's going to be a good week for either one of them. So I would just leave them out of my lineup if possible.
Yeah, my guy is Keaton Mitchell. I think people are riding the high on him right now.
Puff, pass.
The Rams right now rank 7th against running back, so it's a dark red matchup on Sleeper. So it's not good at all. He has had 20, 13, 5, and 10 since he's kind of entered the lineup, and his snap percentage has gone up every week. So I think there will be a lot of people starting him, especially those that need running backs. But I would definitely not play him this week in a tough matchup. In a game that feels kind of gross, you had Matt Stafford as a sit. I think Keaton Mitchell's a sit. I think it could be maybe a little bit low scoring and defensive battle.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a fan of Keaton Mitchell for that.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move the wide receiver position quickly. I have Rashee Rice versus Buffalo. I'll go with Rice again this week. How did he do last week, by the way? I forgot.
He did great. He was going to be my receiver start of the week, and then I was upset when I saw he was already yours.
Yes, jumped the gun. Hey,
so
listen,
he's
way ahead of time.
He's our number one start of the week for both of us.
Yeah. So he is going up against Buffalo. Buffalo, with their plethora of injuries, has not been elite defensively on the year. Kansas City really needs to figure something out offensively because they can win games in the regular season with that defense, and being just good enough offensively. But once you get to the playoffs and things start picking up the pace, it's going to be tougher for that football team. So the offense has got to figure it out. Otherwise, Kansas City, I don't know, hot take, they might be bounced.
They might be, but this is how they looked last year, and they won the Super Bowl.
Offensively, no, they were cooking last year. They were cooking. They were a lot better last year.
They were a little bit, but not. They weren't as bad as this, but they weren't as good as they were in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And then they still won the Super Bowl because Mahomes turned it up in the playoffs.
So, but going up against Buffalo, it is going to be an easier matchup for him, but it seems like Rice, to me, has become the guy in the receiving room for the Kansas City Chiefs. And if you have that guy with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, you want to start him. So I would start Rice. I'm just trying to find his numbers, but my sleeper is moving.
Yeah, no, Rice is good. He would have been my guy, my pick. I think when we get into the offseason and we look at some of these guys and do our reviews on the players, we're going to really look at Rice's post-bye week. I know it's early on that stretch, but last 2 weeks at least has had a lot of targets and a lot of fantasy points, and I think he could be poised for like a real end-of-season true breakout. Yeah. So I do like Rashee Rice. For me, my second choice was Cortland Sutton against the Chargers. I think people may be fooled with the Chargers defense because they played really well last week against the Patriots and gave up 0 points. It helped their team numbers out. But before that, their Chargers defense was considered one of the worst in the league.
Yeah.
And I do think that this game, I don't think it's going to be super high scoring, but I think it'll be higher scoring than people think. The Broncos, even last week, shutting down the Patriots and giving up 0 total points and shutting down all their receivers, are still 30th against wide receivers in fantasy. I think Cortland Sutton could eat. He'd be the Bronco guy that I would want to start over Jerry
Mm-hmm.
Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy uh, isn't really a reliable start. At least Sutton is the red zone guy. Like he has 9 touchdowns this year, so could be a lock for a touchdown against the Chargers.
All right, let's move to the sits at wide receiver. Rick's going to take one of these wide receivers, but I'll take the rest on mine. Parker Washington, Zay Jones, pretty much all the Jacksonville receivers versus the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland, been studly all year on the defensive side of the ball, only giving up 22 fantasy points per game. Specifically, I bring this group up because of Parker Washington. I think that a lot of people are going to be looking at Parker Washington as like a guy that they can start this week because they picked him up off the waiver wire and what's his name got hurt. I think it's Christian Kirk got hurt and I'm going to go get
Christian
this guy.
Kirk, yeah.
And it's like, I'm going to go get this guy and I'm going to slide him into my starting lineup. And I picked him up. And so like, I think there was like 380,000 people picked him up off the waivers this week. And it's like, for what purpose? Because he's going up against Cleveland this week, likely with CJ Beathard as his quarterback. So I just don't see it.
Yeah.
So I would sit pretty much all of the receivers for Jacksonville against Cleveland. It's not a good matchup for the quarterback or for the receiving room.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll take it one step further. I would sit Calvin Ridley this week, even with the Christian Kirk injury, because I just think it's going to be.
I didn't want to be that strong, but
it's going to be a really, really gross game. I think very low scoring, and the Browns have been a top 3 defense against wide receivers, and I think against quarterbacks too. Mm-hmm. I'll double check that, but they've been very, very good against them. They rank, 3rd against quarterbacks and 2nd against receivers. So that's probably one of the hardest matchups you can get in fantasy. The game will be in Cleveland as well. And not to mention that there's a chance that Trevor Lawrence doesn't play. So I don't know how looks like he might play. He had a high ankle sprain, which I think wasn't Mac out 3 weeks last year with a high ankle, or was it 3 or 4 weeks?
It depends on what the grade is, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, still, I think it's kind of. If I were the Jaguars, I would sit him at least 1 week, like give him at least a week.
He's
to heal.
Probably gonna sit. They're playing games.
I think it's smart for them to sit him, and I think he probably will sit, which means Calvin Ridley would be like a very easy choice to sit. And even if Lawrence does play, I don't love Calvin Ridley.
Okay. All right. Let's move to the tight end position quickly and then end the show. I have this week Taysom Hill again versus Carolina. Now, listen, Taysom Hill only had 2 targets for 2 catches last week. Not great.
Yep.
Not great, Bob. But you know what he did have? 13 rushing attempts. Taysom Hill is a running back, baby.
13?
I don't think he'll get 13 rushing attempts as the highest total he had on the year, but they use him in so many quirky ways that and as soon as they get in the red zone, you have to be looking for Taysom Hill because they will find some way to get him the ball in the red zone. He scored a touchdown last week on a rushing play, and he had a lot of rushing attempts. This week it could flip, and he could get 2 rushing attempts and 7 catches. So for me, I don't know why, because I was actually looking at Taysom Hill's numbers on the season so far earlier this week, and I can't tell you why this dude has not. Okay, all right. I'm trying to pull up his numbers. Why this dude has not been more talked about, because the early part of the season, he was on the field. They just weren't utilizing him. For the first 5 weeks, he had 0, 8, 3, 3, 3, and 3. Since week 6, he's had 16, 12, 22, 21, 4, 8, and 15, which would make him, since week 6, I'm glad I was able to bring these numbers up on the show, in PPR leagues, tight end 5. In standard leagues, if you're still hanging around in standard leagues by a thread, he is tight end 1. So
he's the grossest thing in existence, but
I know it's wild. In half PPR, he is the tight end 4. So to me at this point, you should probably run Taysom Hill out in your lineups. Like, and people have been cadoodling him a little bit, and they've been like, oh, well, waiver wire, not waiver wire. He doesn't look like a player that you would want to put in your starting lineup. But and the snap percentages are.
He catches the ball, he runs the ball,
yes.
and he'll occasionally throw the ball.
Exactly. And so for me, it's like if
he's a unicorn that you can put in the weakest position on your lineup.
So if you need, and he also throws it. I don't know if you said that,
right?
But like he does everything. So
when hosts aren't listening,
what'd you say?
I said when hosts aren't listening.
Yeah, when the hosts aren't listening. But it's like he seriously does everything. He's not going to score fantasy points one way. And usually I'd say like if a player can rush, like Deebo Samuel, I think he as a fantasy PPR receiver, he's kind of overrated in the context that he doesn't get a whole ton of targets. So like his fantasy points may come extra on the ground, but he doesn't get points for rushing. He gets he gets points for rushing the ball, but he doesn't get points for a rushing attempt where if he catches the ball at the line of scrimmage, he gets a point for that, even though he didn't do anything with it. So, like, Taysom Hill does everything. Usually I don't, love that, but because of that, if he doesn't have a good receiving day, he can save it with a rushing day, which is what he did this week. And if he doesn't have a good rushing day, he can save it with a receiving day, vice versa, and then also add a weird touchdown pass here and there. So, very strange player. But I don't know why people are not taking advantage of him and starting him in their starting lineups when he does all this weird stuff. He is tight end 5. I'd roll him against Carolina this week.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. Super quickly, David Njoku, tight end for me. Since week 7, he's had double-digit fantasy points, except last week. He's coming off a bad week, but he still had 6 targets in that game, and he had a 25-yard catch that got called back. Mm-hmm. Because I think his foot was out of bounds before he caught the ball in that rule. I forget what it's called, but so they called that one back. But he would have had a pretty decent game if that play stood, or at least it would have been better than what it was. And it's another good matchup against the Jaguars. Usually when a player has been as consistent as Njoku has a bad week, but still had the targets, you would expect him to bounce back. Dorian Thompson-Robinson might come back and play this week. In the 2 games that he started, David Njoku had 9 and 15 targets in those 2 games. And even if Joe Flacco plays, he's probably the better quarterback anyway. And so you would expect to bounce back from Njoku there. So either way, I like Njoku this week.
Okay. All right. Sits at the tight end position quickly. I got Tyler Higbee at Baltimore. So I'm going back to the Baltimore game. Don't think it's going to be a good week for Matt Stafford. Don't think it's going to be a good week for the Rams offense. So Higbee's got to sit.
My guy is Kyle Pitts. You can just bury him and throw him and never see him again.
He had rest of the season of games where we were like, he's back.
I know. Desmond Ridder they don't have a quarterback, and Arthur Smith doesn't use him that well either.
And Arthur Smith's just dumb. Yeah, you can say it.
Correct. Yeah, he's dumb.
Okay, all right. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. There are your starts and sits for Week 14. This has been an interesting regular season of fantasy football. Next week, we start the most important content of all, the playoffs. Get the wins this week. Get to the playoffs. Do your thing, guys. Have a great weekend. See you later.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.